Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jerred Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Kyle Schrum and Joe Courtney. Gentlemen, how's it going?
What's up?
Fantastic. Let's get right into it. So today we are talking about or covering a study called Daily Energy Expenditure Through the Human Life Course. I just love it. Like that could be one of those fake books you guys read. That could be the title.
Okay. What in the world?
Well, just the back half of that, the Human Life Course. Sounds like a...
Yeah, why they wouldn't say lifespan.
Yeah.
So, but whatever.
I love hitting on their study names. Yeah. Because whatever. It's done in 2021. I don't know if I mentioned that. It was a massive study. So energy expenditure is just calorie burn. How many calories you burn in a day. And this was a study of 6,421 participants. So just huge. And I'm going to read kind of some of the breakdown that we got about who was included. So the individuals in this analysis were 64% female and from various geographical locations spread across 29 countries. The age of the participants were also diverse, with the youngest being 8 days old and the oldest 95 years old. This analysis also included data on 136 infants and 141 pregnant and postpartum women not from the database. Additionally, basal metabolic rate measured via indirect calorimetry was available for 2,008 of the subjects. And I don't know how many times it's going to be mentioned now that just came up. They're primarily looking at doubly labeled water. And there was a decent explanation of what that is. I could read the whole thing. Did you guys look into doubly labeled water at all or read what that is, like how it works?
I know it's come up a few times. Yeah. It's always been kind of weird to me.
Yeah. So I just might read this whole thing as a short paragraph, but I just want to give a big picture of what we're looking at and kind of why it matters and why people might want to pay attention. So this is just daily expenditure, through the Human Life Course, as they named it. That's why they named it so directly, but yet oddly. And they cover babies all the way up to 95 years old, because we all hear these cliches and I'm getting older, my metabolism's slowing down, and all these things. And so what these people wanted to look at was how much of a correlation is there due to your age? Is it really age-based? Is that truly the reason you're burning fewer calories? Or is there something else? Is there this age-related hormonal decrease? Or is there some other thing that's happening that actually makes you burn fewer calories, makes you gain fat mass, so on and so forth? And that's what they looked at. And I could jump straight into the takeaway, but I'm not. I'm going to go back to this doubly labeled water that we were talking about. So I'm just going to read it, what it is and why they use this over, putting people in a chamber or whatever else. So briefly, doubly labeled water is a validated measure of free living total daily energy expenditure. It requires a sample of participants' body water, typically urine or saliva, before they drink water that contains elevated levels of the uncommon hydrogen and oxygen isotopes, deuterium and oxygen-18, hence doubly labeled. And then another body water sample at a time point days after drinking the doubly labeled water for comparison. Since oxygen primarily exits the body through breathing and losses of body water, while deuterium only exits the body through losses, breathing, and losses of the body water, blah, blah, blah. The difference between the two can be used to determine the carbon dioxide. So essentially, you're drinking something uncommon, and they take your common state, and then they compare the difference in these isotopes, because they do get into how you can measure like carbon dioxide and everything else. But the reason they use this one is they said it can be used in a free living environment. So meaning you can, as opposed to having to bring you into this chamber or whatever, the reason they really like this in studies of measuring energy expenditure is you can just drink this and then go about your life and then come back and then be measured. And they can check these things out because these isotopes can only exit the body a certain way. They have a very validated way to measure your energy expenditure. So I don't think we'll get into that too much, but I just wanted to hit on that. Like Joe said, it's come up a couple of times. Never really got deep into the explanation. I've never participated in any sort of doubly labeled water personally. If I've had fat-free mass assessed or energy expenditure, it's never been through that method right there. So the big takeaway, I'm just going to kind of jump to the conclusion, and then we can kind of like pull out things that we found interesting. Is like this study to me was the great leveler. There's like no excuse,
Right?
Like when you adjust for how much muscle mass you have. I don't like saying fat-free mass. I would prefer to just say muscle mass. So when you have lower body fat percentage, when you have muscle mass and those things are adjusted, there's like no excuses. There's no excuses for male, female, or I don't want to say excuses, but I say differences. No differences between male, female. There's no differences in age until after it was looking about age 60, which is getting, I still wouldn't call that old these days, but it's definitely far beyond the average age of our athletes. You know, I would say that we do have heavily or predominantly probably middle-aged athletes. If you want to go into the 30s, 40s, 50s, we have a lot of those athletes. And what they're saying here is like, hey, energy expenditure doesn't really change. Like it doesn't really change. So and I think people get in their heads, and we talk about the mental side of this a lot. And that's where I was going to take the study a lot, is people just hear stuff and then it gets ingrained into your psychology. And if I ever catch myself doing something like that too, I oftentimes go to the science. If I ever like say something like, oh, well, you're getting older, your metabolism's slowing down, which I don't say. But if I did say, I'd be like, where did you get that little tidbit? Like, where did you start, putting that into practice and saying it as if it were scientific fact? So having knowing all that, and kind of, we can get into some of the details. What do you guys think about this study overall?
Pretty awesome. Like,
yeah,
I don't think there will be a study, at least for a while, that has such a wide range of people that they studied, which is pretty crazy and pretty awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's something that we kind of talk about with pretty much every study that we look at, right? We think about the sample size and we say, okay, let's try to extrapolate this out. These are some generalized principles that we pulled from a small sample, but like you look at something like this where it's well over 6,000 people that they studied, and you have just in all the different demographics and the different ages and all those kinds of things, you factor all that stuff in, you get a really, to me, obviously it's still an incredibly small portion of the total population on Earth, but to me, I think you still get a really, really good picture of just generalized principles to apply to kind of everybody. And that's one thing that I really appreciated about it. It's a huge sample size. So we can really, in my opinion, that makes the results much more dependable versus a lot of the other studies that we look at.
The graph is just like, it's crazy how steady it is.
Which graph?
With all of these. Yeah,
a lot of
they have so many graphs and tables and data and all that. Like it's just what you would expect from, like I said, a sample size this big.
I think I know which one you're talking about, Joe, where it just kind of like flat lines from the age 20 to age 60.
Yeah.
When it's looking at, I think, total daily energy expenditure or something in correlation to fat-free mass. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not like this like
No.
wavy line or slight decline. It's like, yeah, between ages 0 and 20, there are a lot of changes there. I think we can all agree too. Like, I even thought it was kind of funny that they were diving into infants a little bit in this study. I'm like, have you guys ever had a baby? They're just like a ball of fat. And then they slowly transition. They slowly transition to having muscle mass and growing. Yeah, that's just what they are when they're born. So that part was kind of irrelevant to me because that's what babies are. And then there are just so many hormonal changes in like the teenage population between, just gaining muscle mass because like in men, more testosterone is being produced more heavily and they're going through puberty. And so muscle mass is more easily maintained. So that part of the study I didn't really care about. So there's this there's a dramatic difference there, 0 to 20, but then 20 to 60, it's literally like a flat line across the chart of like no difference in energy expenditure when adjusted for fat-free mass, which leads to like, what's the takeaway here? Like what do you think we should be focusing on if you want to keep that maintenance level and you don't want to pretend like age is a problem for you? You should probably try and build some muscle, right?
Yeah.
That was a big takeaway for me here was like, yeah, you should. And it doesn't mean you have to go on a hypertrophy bodybuilding plan. It just means you should continue to lift weights, through every stage of life. And then I would say it just becomes way more important after the age of 60. Not, okay, here's where things start slowing down. I should probably slow down. And like, no, you should probably just lift more weights, and it doesn't have to be 1 rep maxes and like hard stuff or high volume, but continuing for bone density and for muscle mass into the age of 60 and above, you should continue to lift weights. This is also just a big proponent of that as well. It's not like, okay, well, after 60, bad things happen. It's like, well, you can do something about it and you should continue to do something about it.
Yeah, that cop out generalization. This was another one of those studies to kind of put it in that shoot those things down and go back to our previous study or episode that we did, the AJ nothing but the number. And I think it found performance around there was close to 60, or it wasn't a way above or a good bit above 50 as well for when actual performance metrics started to go down. So yeah, it's just the I guess groupthink is what happens when some people start to say certain things and it just gets ingrained in you. And they even mentioned in here is that like really the middle-aged slump is because people stop lifting weights as much, stop being as active. And like being active can be a number of different things. Middle-aged 40 or so, your kids might be leaving the house 40 or 50, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not, my kids are teenagers, I'm not up and chasing them around as much. I don't go to the gym as much. I just go to work and do this. It's you're not getting older and fatter, you're just getting less active and you're using those muscles less. So your body's going to be more efficient and kind of get rid of them, not hold on to them, and therefore expend less energy and all that. So, I mean, the saying that people always like to throw around for a long time was that muscle burns fat, but in a way, that technically is wrong, but also in this, it makes this kind of right, because it's like, hey, you build muscle, you have the muscle, your body burns more energy. That energy puts you in more of a caloric deficit. That deficit burns fat. So ipso facto, somewhat, muscle burns fat, but doesn't.
So having more muscle mass in general is going to burn more calories, and that's like the same reason why we tell people to eat more protein, because it takes more calories to burn, and it's just going to be better for you, and especially in the gaining of muscle mass. But I was hoping we would kind of take this direction of talking about age, because I think that's been heavily expressed lately in our community about could you guys cover some stuff on age or whatever, and this isn't what you want to hear. You don't, I think they're wanting tips and tricks for as you get older, what you can do. And so I want to talk about a couple things. So there's this one that says, hey, it's just kind of flatlined until after age 60. Maybe there are some difference in energy expenditure. There's some others that we have covered, but a study done in 2017, it's called, and we can put all these linked in the show notes, but comparison in the recovery response from resistance exercise between young and middle-aged men. And you always have to look at the ages. What are they talking about? And this one was all the way up to 59 years old. So the younger group was 18 to 30. The older group was 40 to 59. What they find, not much of a difference, at least in a 48-hour window, with blood markers that there's any sort of difference in recovery between 18 and 59. Like there is some difference, but it wasn't massive. And this is all leading somewhere. There's another study, 2018, internal loads, but not external loads, and fatigue are similar in young and middle-aged resistance training males during high volume squatting exercise. This is one where they did GVT, German volume training, 10 by 10 at 60% of your 1 rep max. It is a taxing high volume workout. And they looked at everyone between ages 20 up to 65 or something crazy like that. And again, there wasn't a lot of difference. Like there wasn't this overwhelming, like, oh, okay, 42. You cut it off at 42, guys. There was nothing like that. They didn't find it in that study either. And then I found one exercise-induced muscle damage in postmenopausal well-trained women. Now, this is looking at women really starting as early in 30s up to 40s and I think 50s. But the only caveat here was these women did have more of a training background. But if you've been training regularly, again, not much of a difference when we get into age. And so when we get all of these, I had one more, 2019, peak age and performance progression in world-class weightlifting and powerlifting athletes. And again, they were saying you could basically be elite level easily into your late 40s. It might be a little bit more challenging in your 50s, but who in our community is trying to be number one powerlifter or, Olympic weightlifter in the world? I wouldn't say there are any of those. So when we're just looking at age, there's not a lot of difference in the science is just starting to back that up. Mm-hmm. But there is a huge difference in psychology versus physiology. And I'm not saying you're getting older and so your mind is getting weaker or you just think that you have problems. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what I've noticed personally is when I was training in my early 20s with no kids and not an entrepreneur, just able to focus 100% on like that was all I cared about. Emily and I got married, let's say after I got married, it was just like, there's Emily and then there was fitness and my job was what it was. Like that was it. Right. And so my ability to focus and just only care about training was really high. And so I've been talking a lot about this with other athletes. I've been calling it FOTT, FOTT, factors other than training. Like, I think that I'm probably going to come up with it, a FOTT score. In the pilot world, it's called operational risk management, ORM. And so before you go on a sortie that you should, they'll have you answer like a list of questions. How much Air Force pilots actually stick to this is questionable, but that's not the point. So they'll look at things like how much sleep did you get? Did you take NyQuil? Like all these things. And then you get an ORM score. And if your ORM score is too high, then you shouldn't train or you shouldn't fly. Like you have too many other things going on that could affect you being optimal in that aircraft. So that's really important, right? Because you could die, you could ruin, or if you don't die, you could ruin a multi-million-dollar aircraft. And I think it's very similar here. You really need to start looking at this FOTT in your life. If you are an older athlete and you're saying, hey, I'm not recovering like I used to, or I'm not seeing the results like I used to, there might be a sliver of truth to that in age, but not from a physiological standpoint, overwhelmingly so per the scientific research. However, there's no doubt that something psychological could be going on. I know if you're in your 50s, your kids are older, you've been married for a long time, like how much do you care about the size of your biceps or even muscle mass in general? When you're not, you don't care about those things as much as when you were 20. And so I just think that there's way more of a psychological thing going on here. And I don't mean what you're telling yourself, all that crap. I'm saying just what you're focused on, what your priorities are, what's stressful, what's not stressful at different ages, what you can handle, what you can't handle. Life comes at you, things hit a little bit harder. Not to take this down a too much of a negative path, but the older you get, the more people around you start to die. Like I've already started to experience that quite a bit, especially I've had a lot of friends die, you don't experience those things when you're younger. And so it just starts to put things in perspective to where you're like, how important is this thing over here? And so I think fitness can get knocked down and being active can get knocked down and your diet can get knocked down because all these other things start to creep up as big, greater priorities. And to be honest, that's the conclusion I've come to from just looking at everything is like all this FOTT factors other than training are affecting your gains, your recovery, your performance more so than any sort of physiological hormonal response, unless you're over the age of 60. So I know that was kind of like a soapbox thing, but we've just been getting so much of this for such a long time. I'm not negating it or doubting that there is some sort of age differences, but I want everyone to look at their life first, all the factors other than training, and see if there's something that could be changed there before you get into, things are just so much different. Because if you have been training and you can train regularly, the science is saying that it's going to be fine. Like you're all right.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we battle as well. Just these myths that we do this a lot on the podcast. We just try to bust these myths around fitness, right? And about how, it changes over time. And so then it gets in people's heads, well, it's supposed to change over time and I'm supposed to get slower. I'm supposed to get weaker. And so it's okay that that's happening. Whereas this study really busts a lot of that, you know what I mean? No, keep taking care of yourself, especially when you add the physical activity, keep taking care of yourself. And this doesn't have to change. It doesn't have to change a whole lot. It really just comes down to, like you were saying, like your priorities. Are you, and that's something else that people think about. I feel like a lot of people look at people who take their fitness seriously as it's all external, as in it's like people who take care of their bodies, they only do it for external reasons. Like they only do it because they want to look good. They only do it because, I don't know, like they want to shame other people or something. Like people who aren't taking care of their bodies for some reason always feel threatened by people who do. You know what I mean? And they come up with these excuses for why they don't. And I know because I did that for most of my life. And really take that mindset out and say, I'm not doing this for those external reasons. I really am. Like the science just proves that, like, if I keep taking care of myself, I'm going to be fine. And like, I'm not going to decline. I'm not going to see this sharp decline towards the end of my life. Like I'm going to be able to hold a lot of that off and I'm going to be able to stay healthy for a longer period of time. So instead of giving into those psychological myths that people surround fitness with, like, no, the science doesn't say that. It just doesn't. It's just a lie.
I definitely think people like to have external blame on something else, like not to blame or take the ownership on themselves and like have some other sort of scapegoat reason why they might be declining. But I mean, just motivation as you get older, I think is, as you mentioned, it will start to wane. And I know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was way more intense, way more high strung and go getter in the gym than I am now. And I know that I had other aspirations and things back then, but I'm still working out now, and realizing that even though I don't have those same goals and that same intensity, I still focus that more narrowly into specific things. So like, while in the past I might have had a bunch of goals and trained for a bunch of things, like this past year, I really only had one goal and one thing that I've been aiming at. So thinking of and realizing, okay, I'm older now. I don't care about having all of these things. I don't care about having a six pack and running this level of 5K and squatting this much into whatever. Maybe just pick one thing and put your intensity and energy toward that, because your life is probably filled with a bunch of other things now. And also admitting, or, to yourself that, hey, I'm not as mentally dialed in or as intense as I used to be. And that's fine. Things happen, but it's not physiologically, age wise, it's not the actual reason. It's more of your mental process of how you're attacking fitness and such.
Yeah, I even went down this path recently. Let's just say the mental struggle with it. And it was primarily like on how I would attack Murph. And I was like, dude, when you were doing this like 2-3 years ago, it was just like, you're going as hard as you could every time. And like, I wanted to was the biggest thing. It wasn't like I pushed myself. I was like, I want to go hard on it. And then more recently, it'd be more like, I don't know. And then I was like, why are you different? What's different? And I actually wondered, I was like, I wonder if my testosterone levels are like lower than they used to be, So I had them tested. Nope. Testosterone levels are great. There's absolutely no issue there. But you see how I immediately went down that scapegoat theory? I was like, Oh yeah, well I am getting older, so maybe the testosterone's level. That was my first, like, instead of like, oh, I don't know, you're juggling multiple businesses, you have 3 kids, and like you're going to 16 different practices during the week, and like all this other crap is just making you slightly less motivated to wake up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday and go as hard as you can on Murph compared to a couple years ago when you weren't doing all these things. Like, maybe that's it. So it's just like, it's so obvious once you kind of like look at things, but in reality, and I was glad that I got the testosterone check, because I was like, well, I can remove that. Like, that's not an excuse, right? Like that was fine. And so I know that it goes back to just this, what are you after? And so to Joe's point, I think the more you can remove from your life, the better. Like, get super focused, like Joe said, on like one thing. Like, hey, I want this is the one goal. It's like, I want to run a fast mile. I want to back squat this much, as opposed to 1,000 other goals, like trying to compound them all together. And then if you are just like taxed, overwhelmed, you have too much going on, I mean, I would remove some of those other things, because you can call me biased or not, but I think fitness and health are one of the most important things in your life. Not this, if I have time for it, when I get around to it type mentality a lot of people have. It's like, it's right up there with family and like everything else. Like, it is just as important to take care of yourself in these regards. And so these are the things that I would look at if you're feeling a little bit different. And I mean, having worked with a lot of athletes, it does. The only thing that I do think is different, I know I said that there was a study on the recovery side of things, but the only limiting part to that study was it only looked at like 48-hour window of like blood markers and stuff. I do think that if you are doing a really hard training cycle, you might recover less efficiently than you did when you were younger. That's the only thing that and this is anecdotal experience, having worked with a wide range of athletes, I just feel like that's the truth. Is the recovery not so much how much you can lift, how fast you can run, how much energy you burn, how much muscle mass you're capable of having, none of those things. It's more like, I do think that your recovery could be affected a little bit. And then, like I said, this is anecdotal experience. So I think that might be the case. I mean, I even feel a hard training session a little bit more than when I was in my early 20s. Like early 20s, a really hard training session was like, next day, let's do it again. Like, who cares? And then, now it is like, okay, well, I'm a little bit more sore. But then again, I have to go back and be like, well, is that an age thing, or did you not drink enough water yesterday? And did you not sleep enough last night? And looking at the actual recovery metrics before we go to like, okay, this is an age thing. And so go look at those things. Look at what you have going on in your life. Look how focused you actually are on your recovery before you start blaming the old calendar for your problems.
Yeah. So, and there, just quickly as well, like there are other like myths that we can bust using this study, male versus female. Obviously, on average, men total mass is higher than females, but I mean, when you adjust for all of those things, for male versus female, the energy expenditure is exactly the same. And so the male female thing is a myth as well. I mean, obviously, if you take one female's numbers against one male's numbers, individually, and compare them, they may not match up, but just overall, like it's all the same, as long as you're increasing your fat-free mass, your lean mass, and holding the standard with your training. It's the same thing for women who are pregnant or who are postpartum. It was the same, like those myths of women don't need to strength train, which we talk about all the time. Women don't need to strength train. We can bust that myth as well. Or women who are pregnant don't need to train. We can, obviously there's some nuances there, but like, we don't need to accept the fact that just because a woman is pregnant means that she doesn't need to train anymore. That's not true. It might look a little bit different, but all of that stays the same. And so I really like that they kind of encompassed all of those things and showed that just no matter what, like basically, as long as you're maintaining physical activity just over time, especially within this 20-year-old to 60-year-old window, everything's going to stay the same, and it's all going to average out. And it really is, like, when you look at that graph, it's just a plateau. It just stays the same. It stays level. And it just kind of slowly decreases slowly. And that's the thing. It's a gradual decrease after 60. It's not
like a drop off.
Like the first year is a huge spike, which makes sense. But then it kind of slowly decreases until 20, and then it levels off and then it gradually decreases after 60. And it's like, it's not a huge drop off. It's just a little bit. But if you maintain your physical activity over that time, you mitigate a lot of that stuff. And it's the same across the board for pretty much everybody.
Yeah. And they talked about, I think it was this, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like over the age of 60, they talked about, I read too many studies today, so I don't even know which one I'm pulling this from. Talked about the reason for eating being different has to do with like the ability to smell and taste differently at an older age, right? You can't smell or taste as much as well.
Your olfactory and your big hunger goes down, like intestinal issues, and like because your taste buds and your senses are going down, you're not as your satiation or whatever level is not as high. You're not you don't crave as much because you're not like smelling and tasting all these fantastic foods. You're just like, I'm just sustaining life now.
Which makes me wonder if it's like, I don't care what it tastes like.
Jerred, are you already 70?
It's like, I don't care what it tastes like. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it smells like. It's just, this is the calories, protein I need right now. Maybe that's a harder mindset to take in in your 60s, but if you just had that mindset, it makes me curious. If you're like, look, I know I have these age limiting factors with smell, taste, and all that, but I still need to make sure I'm eating enough food and enough protein, and I still need to make sure I'm lifting weights. Like, you might be on a whole new trajectory of just maintaining that plateau from 20 to 60 out to 70 or 80. If you can stay on top of these things mentally of what you need to do, as opposed to just trying to let your sensations guide when you should eat and everything else. So I did think that was interesting as well, but it comes down to, it's so funny the ultimate takeaway is like, okay, move more. Don't sit on your ass so much, no matter how old you are. Okay. That one, big, huge one. And then eat more than you, or eat less than you burn, or maintain it, like make it equal, right? Like, okay. So not a lot of huge takeaways. Like there's like an awesome, like, okay, well, this is cool. It's like a really cool study, but ultimately we're going back to square one of fitness 101 that people know at the age of like 5. Got to keep moving, got to stay active. Doesn't matter how old you are, and you can't eat too much.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry. I mean, I wish it was different, but it doesn't matter if you're male, female, or really how old you are. Like, those are the takeaways for being fit and healthy.
Yeah. I wish there's part of me that wishes like there was some kind of like new revolutionary thing, like we could just pass on to people like, here's the secret, you know what I mean? But no, it really is everything that we've been talking about for forever, especially on this podcast. It's like everything we've been telling you. This is a huge study with a huge participant base that just reaffirms everything that we've already been saying.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. That's it. If you guys want to dive into the study, you can. I don't think we need to jump into killing comfort for this, because we kind of did. We're kind of like, hey, readjust your mindset. Look at your FOT, which is going to be a new term I use all the time. So just burn it into your memories. FOT. I'm probably going to put it into the coaching course to help people better understand their athletes is what I'm going to do. But yeah, just look at your FOT, your factors other than training. Look at the stories you're telling yourself, limiting beliefs that you might have around your age. And then the only other thing I did have in my notes was, I do think that this is different if you started training recently. If you like trained a lot in your 20s and then you took your 30s off, you're like, this is gonna be a fun decade. Let's just see what happens. And then you started training again in your 40s. Yeah, that's going to hurt like hell, like way worse than in your 20s, and still has nothing to do with your age. It has to do with taking a decade off of fitness.
Yep.
So yeah, that's going to hurt. It's almost like your body went into atrophy and you're trying to like use it again. So that shouldn't be surprising, because you can't take a decade off when you were training in your 20s, because you more or less did. It's just called growing up, like you playing sports or whatever. So that's where it's really different. And that's a lot of the times who people, when people are talking about age, where it becomes their concern. It's like, wow, this is different than when I was 24. It's like, yeah, those 15 years off didn't help, did it? So making sure that you're just consistent would be my last thing. Is like, you don't need to be perfect, guys. You don't need to get everything done, but starting again after stopping for a long time is probably one of the hardest things you can do. So if you can just continue to do something every day, whether it's our programming, 1 block of our programming, 2 blocks of our programming, or just some form of exercise, and you're taking a look at your overall activity levels, like, just don't quit, because getting back on the horse is really hard.
Yeah, just get the boulder rolling, right? It takes a certain amount of effort to get it rolling, but then once it gets rolling, especially, it just kind of picks up its own momentum and just kind of keeps going. So just hold the standard, and don't give into those things that are going to try to, it's just little mind attacks. You know what I mean? That's all it is. It's just guerrilla warfare. Just fight against it.
And on the reverse of that, if you're in your 30s, don't stop.
Right.
Don't think of the 40s as like, well, that's probably when my decline happens, so I'm just gonna, watch my kids grow up and just do dad stuff and be fine. But no, establish your baseline, keep your baseline, and if you're just starting back up from a while, then slowly increase your baseline.
Well, and I've worked with a lot of those athletes, and that's why I'm kind of like, I don't have anybody specifically when I mention these things. But I do see that oftentimes someone coming, they're normally like late 40s, early 50s that I've worked with on like an individual basis. And they're like, they did kind of take a break. Maybe there was something in there, but they were so busy with kids and everything. Then all of a sudden that made their kids go to college or like get more involved in high school stuff. And they're getting more time. They're getting their time back. And they're like, yeah, I do want to focus on fitness more. And so I see that happen a lot. And I just don't do it. Is the only thing. You don't have to be perfect, but just don't take off that time. And if you're listening to this and you're kind of like slipping down that slippery slope of comfort and mediocrity, just stop. You can start back. All right, let's get into the topic, Joe. This might go fast anyway. So
yeah. Non-staple staple foods.
Round
We're
2.
back.
Ding ding.
The OG of non-staple staple episodes. And I decided, about a year ago we had this, so why not bring it back? Because we've read 4 nutrition books in this past year since we've done this. So maybe some things have changed. We all got on a big fiber kick, and I haven't seen any fiber posts in our Slack channel in a while, but that happened. That was the cool thing to do for a little bit. But
that was the cool thing to do. All right, I'm gonna start posting my daily fiber shot.
It was a cool little moment that we had as a team.
I didn't, but everybody else is like, "Ooh, look at this!" And then like dressing up your plates and making it look fine. And my bowl is just like a hot mess of deliciousness. But
Joe just proclaiming his superiority here.
Well,
this is something I was doing all along.
Just so you know, I've never dressed up a plate. That's just how Emily serves it. So I'm just. Do you think that's fancy?
There you go. It's a relative term, anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, can you explain non-staple staple?
Yeah.
For
so
anyone who's new to the podcast, maybe.
And
so it's like when you go to the grocery store, there's like okay, good. You go to the grocery store, you have your staples, onions, potatoes, whatever meat you have for the week. There's just like staples that you put in food that you cook a lot of, or that like, hey, we always need a vegetable, so we're just buying broccoli every week. But what are some non-staple foods that you maybe you make sure to have it once a week, maybe twice a month, maybe something that you like to have semi regularly or monthly because it's either great for you or you just want to incorporate it more? That's kind of what I'm aiming for here, that everybody wants to eat. We get sweet potatoes every week. It's kind of a staple food. But what are some other ones that you also like to add in?
Go ahead and kick it off, Kyle.
All right. Yay. Now that I know what it is. No, I'm just kidding. I knew what it was. So especially thinking about some of the books that we covered recently and trying to incorporate some more of that, because as Jerred says, if you read a book and you don't implement it, then it was basically wasted time. I've been trying to get some more probiotics in my diet. The easiest way that I found for me is just kombucha. So I've been drinking a little bit of kombucha 2 or 3 times a week, just trying to throw that in and make that a little bit more regular. Because the team knows that, I kind of went, especially after we read that, what was it? Was it Fiber Fueled? Was that the book that we read where we all just kind of went crazy. Or
And it was
everybody
like,
except
it was
Joe.
more about gut health, right? Like it wasn't just increase in fiber. It was just like, there were a lot of things for gut health in general that you could be doing.
Yeah. And so I just tried some things. I tried the kimchi, wasn't a fan. Sauerkraut, wasn't a fan, but was more a fan than the kimchi. And I don't know, just kombucha is just it's liquid, so I just drink it. It's fine, works out. So I've been trying to just add some kombucha a couple, 3 times a week. Also, I've been experimenting getting I really severely limited carbs for a while, just trying to get my migraines in check and things like that. And that's kind of what I've narrowed it down to, but I've been kind of working those back in over the last few months. And so oatmeal and sweet potatoes have worked out for me pretty well. Not experiencing any negative side effects from that. So that's helping me. And that also helped me being on BCT, needing some more carbs instead of like low carb and BCT. Not a good mix. Wasn't great. So just tried to add some more of that in. So oatmeal and sweet potatoes have become a little bit more staple, non-staples. And then more greens as well. Just throwing some, especially spinach. Spinach is like my go-to leafy green now. So I really like that. Yeah, more greens. And then supplements wise, fish oil. I've been really trying to stay on top of that. Obviously we don't do a whole lot of supplements around here. But fish oil is one that I've really stuck to, the Carlson's brand, which I think Jerred actually suggested on the podcast a long time ago, which is the reason why I got that one. But yeah,
There's
sticking to
something
that one.
about fish oil. It's the hardest supplement to take consistently. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a problem. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like the burps. Or like, I could care less. I don't care about any of that. I just, for some reason, I can remember to take Athletic Greens every damn day of my life. But for some reason, fish oil, doesn't matter if I put it in front of my computer or next to my coffee machine. I always forget those damn things.
Yep.
But we've already covered multiple studies that talk about fish oil, and it's like the best thing for you on the planet, and it's so hard to take on a regular basis. It's like there's got to be something in it. There's like there's a psychological thing going on there.
Yeah. Well, and you can even, like the way I just have a subscription with Amazon. Like they can just send it to you ever so often. You can choose how often they send it to you, right? But it's not about that. It's about actually taking it out
then
of
you
the
get a
bottle
lot
and
more than
taking
you
it.
need. In my case,
You wind up with a couple different shipments of it, and you're like, holy crap, this is a ton of fish oil. So
What's the expiration date on this?
yeah, I know, right? So anyway, those are my non-staple staples now, Joe.
Yeah, so I think the first time I mentioned cabbage and like Brussels sprouts, I definitely have those on the regular, but now it's like I'm having some sort of cabbage or Brussels sprouts or both every day. It's just how it is.
So your non-staples have become staples.
Yes, this non-staple has become a staple. Well, I was segueing and prefacing that I said this before. It has become.
I ruined it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, my bad. I didn't read your notes.
But,
you led me there already.
Yeah. But yeah, cabbage and sprouts. But I think if you're not eating those, you should make it one of your non-staple staples. We always also have tart cherry juice on hand. We've brought this up several times, and on the fueling
What's your
series.
go-to brand there?
I have no idea. The white bottle's white.
Bottle's white. Okay, I'll go down with that.
We got it on Amazon. I'll have to.
I think I know which one you're talking about. It's like the most popular one on Amazon. It's organic.
Yeah. It's pretty large. They last a while because you only put like 3-4 ounces or whatever in a cup.
Is it the concentrate?
Yeah, concentrate.
Yeah.
Because I'll put some of that in some like mineral water, like bubbly mineral water, and maybe even some electrolytes, and it's just like my super drink. So that I always have on hand to regularly have. Chilies. I always like spicy food, but actually cooking with chilies it works up a sweat. It's great stuff. What else? I don't know why I've just never been that great about eating fruit. I just really never really cared about fruit. If I want to, because to me, fruit, sugar's carbs. If I'm going to have carbs, I'm going to have some rice or some sweet potato because I'm a savory person, not a sweet person. But we've been keeping blueberries on hand more, and I'll have like a handful of blueberries when I, especially if I want like any sort of sweet tooth or any sort of something sweet, I've been doing that.
Berry should not be included in that sugary fruit category.
True,
Like,
because it's not even that sugary, and the fiber.
Yeah, they're really not.
Kind of
offsets it. Yeah.
If
you're talking about like eating a banana as your fruit or a
Yeah.
couple of bananas, yeah, that's different. But
can't remember the last time I had a banana.
Yesterday. Sorry. I had one yesterday.
Pop quiz. When was the last time you had a banana? I know this one.
Mine was the weekend, actually. I had one on Saturday. So
let's just make banana bread, like gluten-free banana bread.
This is why people are here, by the way. This is
that's it.
Yeah.
Give the people what they want.
When's the last time Jerred ate a banana? That's
yeah. Being overseas, like back in the States, we never had any dairy, but being over here, we actually get like Greek yogurt and other stuff because the source of dairy is better. So we're actually like, I've started to have Greek yogurt like once or twice a week. And even like this week, we started to make some where you soak the yogurt in some muesli stuff, and it has like a lot of fiber. So I'm getting a lot of fiber and probiotics there and some protein. So stuff like that has been really great, because if I can make like a big batch of it, and then I'll just go in, take a few scoops out, put some blueberries on it, maybe some higher fats type of granola. And that's like a fantastic snack with all kinds of stuff loaded in it.
Yeah, blueberries go really well with stuff like that, with yogurt, or I put them in oatmeal as well. They go really well with that kind of stuff.
Dude, I put blueberries.
Good place to get berries in instead of just like eating them straight. If like you're saying, you're not like really a sweets person, mix them in with something else.
Yeah, blueberries are just, they can throw anything. Whenever I have like because we'll also keep some bread on here, whether it's like a sourdough or something, or Liz will make like an oat flour bread, and I'll put nut butter on it and then put some blueberries on top of that. Fantastic. So these are like things that I do every couple of times a month, or a couple of times a week, now and then, but it's not like I'm eating it every day, like my cabbage. And I actually do wish I could find kimchi here, but for some reason I cannot.
I'll send you some. I'll get as much of it away from me as possible.
I mean, it's already aged and rotten, so you might as well, I don't think it can get any worse.
So just have more good stuff.
Yeah, it'll just
more bacteria.
It's better over time.
Sounds legit. All right, Jerred.
All right. This one's always difficult for me because I feel like my entire fridge and pantry are non-staple staple foods. And that's just like all the healthy stuff Emily buys that's not a part of my regular diet. Because like I have like the set things that I eat. And so if I just want to go find something fun that's like a non-staple, I just need to like open the fridge. And it's like, oh, cool. I haven't had that thing in a while.
Well, I mean, since fiber fueling, before that, you went from I'm going to eat the same exact vegetable every single day of my life to I'm going to eat like 2 or 3.
I was going to get into it. I was just saying like we have a lot of like stuff that I typically, not always on my radar, but that was my biggest point. So having red fiber fueled, that did change, I think, my mindset about like rotating. Like I still have a shake, nearly every day. And I try and cycle what kind of leafy greens are going in that. So I do, like Kyle, have a lot of spinach, but I also try and cycle that through other stuff. And Sprouts has this stuff that's like power greens that has like 3 or 4 different leafy greens in it too. But that's more of like a staple these days. But I have made a lot of changes based off fiber fueled. Fish oil is one that I kind of already talked about. Kyle brought it up, but like that is one for me. I'm really trying to get better about taking fish oil for a lot of reasons. But I always forget. It's so hard. I think it's because it says take with a meal. Mine says take with a meal. And that's like, well, if I don't take it first thing in the morning, I'm not eating in the morning. So I forget about it. So fish oil is definitely one of those. Tart cherries on my list as well. I've recently started doing that again. A lot of the fermented foods, I don't hate them as much as Kyle. They're just not like they're not something I think about, but I actually really do enjoy, sauerkraut? Like, I think that's really good. And it's got a lot of good probiotic stuff in there. So I've been trying to take a little bit more of a gut focus with my non-staple staple foods. One thing I did start taking or adding to my shake occasionally is psyllium husk. And so I got my blood work done this past summer and my cholesterol was on the high end. It wasn't like scary or anything. And again, people can debate like whether or not cholesterol really matters. Like my functional med doc wasn't concerned about it at all. but the people who process the blood work recommended like oatmeal or psyllium husk to take on a regular basis to help reduce cholesterol. And I was like, I just want to kind of see if this works. And so I'll take it probably 4 times a week in a shake. And then I'll get my blood work done here in like another 6 months. And if nothing changed, I'll never touch stuff again. And then if it did, cool. What a fun experiment. I do think similar to Kyle, I've increased carbohydrate consumption over the last 6 months. Oatmeal has started to make a regular appearance in my diet. Where previously I wouldn't have touched it just for staying away from carbohydrates in general. So that's about it. Things that increase the health of my gut. Some of the supplements: psyllium husk, fish oil, tart cherry juice. Just all super boring things overall on my list. But I think we paint a pretty good picture of we're just trying to be healthy here at Garage Gym Athlete, and we're not really doing anything else. I mean, I have the occasional burger and French fries. And I think that you got to run a little diesel through the engine every once in a while. That's a non-staple food, but I absolutely love a good cheeseburger with like bacon on it and French fries. I don't do that on a daily or weekly basis by any means, but I'll definitely, like, Joe's coming in town in a few
2
weeks.
weeks.
That's what we're doing. Like that's what we'll do. And it'll be nice, but that's another non-staple food, just so people know I'm not a robot. I like eating some of those things too. I definitely don't have a sweet tooth though. You could offer me any pie or cake in the world and I'm easily, no, thank you. But you offer me a cheeseburger and I'll be like, well, we may have just become best friends. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of it. Anything else?
I'm the opposite on that. Give me all the sweets. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. It's a struggle for me. Also,
Sweets.
in Texas, you can have brisket added to a cheeseburger.
He was so impressed by
just-
that when he came to
mind
visit.
blowing.
It was like a
just
bacon
mind-blowing.
cheeseburger, and they're like, I think they actually asked him, like, would you like to add brisket for $3?
Yeah.
And he was like,
What?
he had like a pause. He's
I was
like, wait,
Wait a second. What?
you want to add meat to my 2-meat burger?
Yeah. It's
Beef
amazing.
comes with a side of beef.
Yeah. It's
Texas.
amazing.
Yeah, we could put queso on top of it too.
Whoa. I have tried Pecillium husk. I've done it before because I didn't do it quite for the cholesterol thing, because I had the same thing where I went and it was like your normal range, but it's like high of normal and everything else is like below normal or like low. But I also did read about, I think it is I don't know if it was a resistant starch or something, but it's good. It was supposed to be good for you and your gut. Pro tip: if you do try it and you put it in a shake, drink that shake immediately. Have you?
Yes. Yeah. For anyone who hasn't messed with that, I typically, I put a small amount because when I looked at it, it was said the serving size was a teaspoon, and I was like, maybe for babies. And I put in like a couple of tablespoons or something like that. And my shake immediately turned into like this gelatinous, like I couldn't drink it. Like it was no longer like I had to eat it with
pudding now.
Yeah, it was definitely a pudding after that. And so I made that mistake. And then otherwise now I put a very small amount in the shake, and I do tend to drink my shakes kind of fast. I don't chug it, but I also found with like how much stuff and liquid I put in there, a couple of grams of it won't be that big of a deal. But yeah.
Such a dude thing to do. Instructions? I don't need these. Don't tell me what to do.
Right.
Well, I put it in there. It was like teaspoon, 4 grams. And so I actually measure things out in grams on my shake. And so I put in 4 grams and it was just like a sprinkle of this stuff. And I was like,
What?
yeah, what? This is not serving size for me. Like
My
I'm a
shake is
grown
huge.
yeah. Yeah. So do be careful with that stuff. All right. We can get to the workout, Joe. What is it, man?
All right. It is fat and sugar. And I'm just going to first say that this is the workout where we were making it up, and I was going back and forth with Jerred, and then Jerred decided to ask Marco, and this is Marco's famous, well, just do burpee pull-ups with a vest on. And it's like, well, there goes the neighborhood. That's basically what happened.
Joe immediately hates his workout now.
I still have the original unedited version that I have on my watch, and I've done, and I would still prefer that, even though it takes longer than this one.
Just out of spite.
Just out of spite. But fat and sugar. Repeat the following circuit. You have 8 minutes of zone 2. So bike, walk, or run, bike, walk, whatever in zone 2, that is 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. Then you will do 2 minutes in zone 4. For those keeping count, there is a zone 3 in between there. that if
His
you're out
favorite
of.
part.
We
Yeah.
always have to highlight.
Oh, this is where they're not penalty burpees thing came from too. So 2 minutes in zone 4 or greater of burpee pull-ups. So that is 80% or higher. So that means at the end of your 8 minutes of zone 2, you have to go from 70 to 80, and you will do this for the 2 minutes of zone 4 until you have accumulated 100 burpee pull-ups. But and competitors will wear the vest. But after you finish your 100 burpee pull-ups, you will do 5 minutes of recovery. During this period, tally up how many minutes you spent outside of zone 4, 2, 4, or 5. So zone 3. And that time spent, every minute time spent will do 10 burpees, and you're capping yourself at 100 burpees. So that means if you end up with, 6, 7 minutes of zone 3 or 1, which you probably shouldn't jog down to 1. So zone 3, then you're going to be doing 60 to 70 burpees afterwards. Just regular burpees, not with the vest.
If you press the gas hard from 2 to 4, you might finish the entire workout with no additional burpees because you can just jump. As long as you're under the 60-second threshold in total, you're fine. No additional burpees.
Yeah, press the brakes on your recovery too. Like just come to a halting stop, going from 4 back down to 2.
The recovery is the harder part.
I think that's where it gets people, is coming from. It's not going from 2 to 4. It's especially doing burpee pull-ups. Like you're going to get up to 4 pretty quick, and then but it's coming back from 4 back down to 2. And so I think that's where it takes time.
I actually think you need a defibrillator to actually complete this workout without burpees, but that's just me.
I'm gonna film it being done. I'll show you how it's done.
And all we need is like
I can't remember. I was pretty low. I mean, I think I was.
Yeah.
I do think I did additional burpees, but I can't remember what it was. It may have been like 2 minutes or something like that, though.
I was gonna say, I think I saw some people with 30 or something.
Yeah. Tips. I'll jump in first. I'll let you guys take the end here. But this is an educational workout, and that was the main reason I wanted to put it together, is because we talk a lot about zone 2 training, and then also just zone training in general, and then what fuels are associated with your different levels of intensity. So I think calling it fat and sugar is just really helpful, because you're burning fat, you're oxidizing fat more in a zone 2. Now, this isn't a scientific workout to where we want you to burn fat and sugar specifically. That's just what's happening, and that's what the research backs up. And so that's my biggest thing and biggest takeaway for this is realize what intensity burns fat and realize what intensity is burning sugar. And if you are concerned about how much burning more fat mass, then take a look at these different intensities. And it maybe should be like a workout I should just hand to CrossFitters to make them realize you guys almost never burn fat. Like you're just here, you're sugar burners. Like you're just like burning today's sugar over and over again. So it's an educational thing to help you understand how fuel is related to different levels of intensity. So know that. Other than that, I think we said you can't come down from zone 4 by like laying down, right? Like I don't know if that was written, because technically if you get to like zone 5, let's say, which is very intense, and you need to come back down to zone 2, you could just sit for 8 minutes if your recovery is not there, right? You know what I mean? Like, you guys know what I'm talking about? I'm getting okay. So you could just sit, and your body would be in zone 2, but you need to be moving. So I think that we eliminated that, because that is like technically what you could do. So just find that moving pace that would get you back to zone 2. It's probably just be really slow, slow in nature. So yeah, that's it. Just more of an educational side, and also do less than you think you have to in zone 2, probably, and maybe stay away from zone 5. I know we said you can go there, but if zone 5 does become this, like, once your body gets there, how good you are at recovering is a major factor. And you might know whether you're good at recovery or not. That's also like an assessment level of your fitness. But if you get up to zone 5, that's super taxing on the body. And so to get back down to zone 2 is very challenging. So I'd want to stick the higher intensity stuff in zone 4. That way I could come back down to zone 2 pretty fast.
Yep. Yeah, I think another reason, and we do in the breakdown, the official breakdown, we do specify any time in zone 1 also counts towards your burpees at the end, which my thinking is people trying to strategize, especially like what you're talking about, why you can't just sit down, right? If you sit down for 8 minutes, you're probably going to get back down to zone 1. I think pretty much everybody in 8 minutes, you'll be even beyond zone 2. So you need to be moving. And so as long as you're moving, I think you'll stay out of zone 1 for the most part. But I think there are some people in the community that could still be moving even if they're moving slowly and still go to zone 1. So you have to keep yourself in zone 2, because zone 1 also, it's not just like, let's just rest as long as we can until we have to go hard for 2 minutes again. It's like you have to strategize it properly. So being in zone 2, that's where the fat burn comes in. Make sure that you're sticking to your zone. So I think there are some people out there who would have to be aware of zone 1. So zone 1 time counts towards your burpees at the end as well. Also, there's no time cap on the burpees at the end. There's a rep cap. So there's 100 burpees at the end. So there's no time cap. You got to finish those burpees at the end. No matter
like 5 or 6 minutes. Not that long.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting for this workout. This is just anecdotally for the experienced people that have done this before or plan on doing it again. Time is always something that's good to look at with some of these workouts. Everyone wants to improve their time, but I think it would be interesting if you tracked the 8 minutes of zone 2 distance and see how your distance compares. Now you might end up doing a one less set of it, but I think that would be interesting to see if, especially because you have to come down and recover. So you're going to be spiked up there. It's one thing to, we do our zone 2 runs, but if you're mixing in this stuff, then that's really going to test how you recover and how your heart rate gets down. That would be pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of why we do the zone 2 Murph as well, right? That's what we're looking at, is like how much work can you get done in that time, staying in zone 2 the whole time. You know what I mean? It's not just about your time at all. It's about, or just your raw time. It's about, how quickly can you get stuff done while staying in zone 2.
Yeah, and recovery time is an established level of fitness assessment. Like that's one way to see how fit you are outside of, hey, go run this as fast as you can. Because if I say this happens a lot, let's just say with younger athletes, going back to that mentality thing, who have like a lot of grit or whatever. And I used to do this in the Air Force early on with the 1.5 mile run. Now I could run 1.5 miles in 9 minutes, but the aftermath was super disgusting compared to what it is today. And I don't mean actually gross. It's just like I was dead. And I bet if you tracked my heart rate, like it was probably at 190 for 9 minutes. I just went as hard as you could go. And then I bet I probably took me 30 minutes to fully recover from that. And like my heart rate was in the probably in the 170s for a while, finally gets in the 160s. Like that's just such a taxing thing on your body. Today, if I were to do that, I don't know if I could actually run it that fast, but let's say 9:15, 9:20, something like that. I would probably be recovered within a few minutes after it was complete. Like I'm probably 3 to 4 minutes, because I'm a lot fitter, And so sometimes time doesn't matter as much, like how fast you can get it done, unless you're actually competing against someone in something. That's the only time it actually matters. Yep. So how fast you recover is huge, because if you're not an experienced athlete or you don't train that often and you go really high intensity, your recovery takes a very long time. And that's normally a factor that you should look at, is like, okay, I just went really hard and I don't feel recovered for a long time. That will change as you get fitter, but it's something definitely to note. And you could even do this after just regular training sessions. Be like, okay, that was intense. I'm just going to sit here. How long does it take for me to get back to zone 1? Is that 45 seconds? Is that 11 minutes? That's a good assessment of your fitness level.
Yeah. It increases your work capacity. Decreasing your recovery time increases your work capacity. Being able to do more work in less amount of time. That's what you're looking for. And that's what recovery time helps with. So yeah, absolutely. Being able to recover properly. That's what it's not just about doing the work. It's about recovering properly so you can continue to do the work and do more in a shorter amount of time.
Last thing to note is, because this is a lot of heart rate tracking, I believe we've said in the past that if you aren't tracking your heart rate, you don't have a heart rate monitor tracker, then you're just doing 100 burpees.
Yeah, it's a punishment. That is where it's a punishment. You get punished if you don't have a heart rate monitor.
Oh, that's not nice.
Yeah, it's a very useful tool. You really should
But
use
you can
one.
also do your burpee pull-ups in Zen 3, so enjoy that sucker.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, you don't really know what you're doing. So just do the workout and then enjoy your 100 burpees at the end. All right. Well, that's it. That's all we got for this week. Everyone following the programming, and whether you are one of our middle of the road aged athletes, you're not old and you have no excuses. So I'm just going to tell you all that. No excuses. But honestly, thank you all so much for being one of our athletes. We're here to tell you like it is. And this was the science today. But we do enjoy having you guys around and making the community what it is. And it's really awesome. For anyone who's not a part of the community, go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial, and see what it's like. See what it's like to train all the different energy systems and strength methods and everything else there is on this planet that no one else is doing, because we really care about our programming. So that's it for this week. And remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Gym Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Thanks for listening.